Hello everyone, welcome back to Powerful Nothing, a Magic the Gathering Cube podcast. I'm your host Dan, better known on the internet as Too Sweet MTG, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host James. James, we're back from our summer break. How are you doing? Are you well?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. I'm excited to be talking about some new Magic cards. Just as we were on the last episode, we have become a set review podcast. It's official back-to-back set reviews.
We've been busy. I've been doing things over the summer.
Yeah, I also don't think it's entirely on us. But there was not a long time between these two sets.
I think, it was like less than 7 weeks. Or it's by the time Edge of Eternities is released, it will be 7 weeks since Final Fantasy came out. So at time of recording, probably about 4.5, 5 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Exactly. What's another spoiler season? We're all good. But anyway, yeah, it is nice to be back in the world of Magic because this is our Cube set review for Edge of Eternities. We've got a Tezzeret, we have a bunch of cool cards, and we also have some new mechanics. Some of these are a little bit weird, so we thought probably best to just touch on some of the mechanics ahead of time just so we don't have to explain them every time as we go through the set review. One very flavorful mechanic, James, is station, i.e. space station. We're in space, we're in the Edge of Eternities. There's a bunch of really cool, awesome ships. Do you want to read Station for us and give us your thoughts on it?
Yeah, for sure. So Station appears on a bunch of cards, primarily ones with the subtype spacecraft. So Station reads, you can tap another creature you control. You put charge counters equal to its power on this spacecraft. Station only as a sorcery. Then the Station cards will all have sort of thresholds for abilities they gain as they get more charge counters. So, for example, here we've got Pinnacle Killship. It's a 7-mana artifact spacecraft. When it enters, you deal 10 damage to up to one target creature. And then as you station it, you put charge counters on it. And when it has 7 or more charge counters on it, it becomes a 7/7 creature with flying. So some of them will have sort of multiple levels you can go to. So some of them will be like 5 charge counters, it does this thing, and then at 10 charge counters, it does something bigger. This is an interesting mechanic to me. It's kind of mechanically a little bit similar to Crew, I guess, but instead of getting the temporary effect of becoming a creature for a turn, we're permanently adding these charge counters, and then when we reach specific thresholds, we get some permanent bonuses. The other really big difference from Crew, though, is that this is sorcery speed only. So that means you have to tap your thing on your turn and probably not attack or block with it for a whole turn cycle, which is very much giving something up. I think the spot this is going to play out best is in aggressive creature-heavy decks. The reason for that is that when you cast a creature, it is summoning sick for a turn anyway, so you can't attack with it. If you're an aggressive deck, you probably don't care about blocking with it, so you get to sort of get that station activation in for free pretty much, which is nice. And that's going to allow your spacecraft to sort of get up to a smallish number of charge counters, probably that first level on a lot of them, without having to give up anything, right? Without having to give up attacks or blocks. Obviously, if you don't have many creatures in your deck, this mechanic just doesn't work for you at all. If you're a controlling deck, like a more mid-rangey deck that's really into blocking, this isn't going to work for you very well. Also worth knowing, because it's sorcery speed, you can't do things like cast your Flage and then before it gets sacrificed, station. That stuff all doesn't work. Yeah, it feels to me like we can get a small number of charge counters for free, but some of them have really big charge counter thresholds. Like some of them you have to get to like 20 charge counters. That stuff feels like very late game to me, and probably like it won't come up very much.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think flavor-wise, I do like it. I think I get it kind of at big vehicles. I think in Commander, where you can really build around it, I think it's going to be fun. Like you can also add some proliferation in there, get the counters up. And I also think in Limited, like in set Limited, I think it's going to be fine. From looking at the set, there's a bunch of like cheap, high power, low toughness creatures with Defender that are clearly just there just to crew vehicles. I'm putting it out there, though, for Cube, I think Station is really bad. That's just kind of my opinion. It's kind of like they went like the Outlast mechanic was too quick. Let's make it slower.
I mostly agree with you. I think it is better than Outlast in that you can station with a creature the turn you play the creature.
That is true, yes.
So you get that one while it's summoning sick, and it doesn't cost mana. That bit's nice. So like, there's a couple of cards, right, where a first level is like station 2. You can get to that really easily. I think if that is on a good effect, that's fine, as long as you have a ton of creatures in your deck. But yeah, I think in general, the thing of I'm going to tap a bunch of creatures on my turn repeatedly over the course of the game to eventually build to some big end goal, and then you might just blow up my spaceship anyway. That's kind of rough, right? Like, some of them are like so many charge counters that it really feels like you should have just been attacking your opponent at this point.
There's some where it's like 8 plus, 7 plus.
Why didn't we attack our opponent for ace instead of doing that?
That's it exactly, and it's also the life swing, because you can't block with those creatures either. Like obviously creatures with vigilance will get better because you can at least attack with them and then do it post combat, I guess. But just generally, just the play pattern just feels really not great for me. Like I don't think they're that good at breaking board stalls either. They're the kind of thing of like they're big and they're splashy and kind of you can put all this resources into them and then you can in theory win the game with them. But like I don't think that they're good at breaking board stalls, because if you have one of these stationed and didn't die in that time, then you could probably have been attacking if you had spare creatures. And just because of the amount of time it's going to, like, generally speaking, you're going to be putting like multiple turns into potentially crewing one of these things. Your opponent, it's not like it's the most obvious thing your opponent will see coming. They will just hold up that Doomblade for when it's crewed and then just kill it immediately. And then at that point you've wasted 3 turns, maybe not attacking with some creatures, maybe like just I think the blowout potential is really big with Station, and again, I think in Commander, very cool, and I think in Limited, I think it's going to be maybe not as good as like Vehicles initially was in like Kaladesh, but I think it'll be fine, it'll be solid. But I think in Cube, it's very slow for me, and even in slower cubes, I think there's probably cooler things you can maybe do, but that's probably personal opinion, I guess.
Yeah, I could see it being a bit tough. I think the other thing is, because I think it's meant to be good in board stalls, but also board stalls just don't happen very much in most cubes at this point. Like, cards are just powerful; they get stuff done. I find it's not that many games you end up with a bunch of like 3/3s and 4/4s staring into each other, and you can afford to start tapping some of them to get this incremental advantage. Yeah, because the thing is, right, the turn when you tap your creatures and wake up your big spacecraft, that turn's fine. It's the turn before where you had to tap some creatures, achieve literally nothing to build towards doing this next turn. Like that's the problematic turn, right? And a lot of these spacecraft, like, the numbers are just big for that station cost. And like, it's like, and like most mechanics aren't inherently good or bad, right? They're just, it depends what the numbers are like on the cards. But the numbers on the cards don't look great for Station to me, to be honest.
Yeah, like the Modern Horizons 4 version of Station is probably going to be cracked. But it's just, generally speaking, most of the cheap ones have very high station numbers, or the very expensive ones have low ones. But it's basically nothing's happening soon. There is a couple we're going to be talking about. There are a couple that are interesting. We will save them for the set review. But yeah, I think to begin with, I think they've played it safe. But after Nadu, maybe they were being a bit more careful with this kind of stuff. Who knows? At some point, that did not say sorcery speed.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, I think, to be fair, I don't think it's going to be a big thing in Cube, but I think for limited gameplay, putting sorcery speed on this was a really good move, because otherwise it's way too free, right? You just pass with all your blockers up, Station, end of turn, and you didn't have to make a decision there. You didn't have to give anything up to Station. Whereas sorcery speed, it actually forces you to make a decision. So I think that is good design, but it's just going to be tough for Cube.
That makes sense. The other mechanic we wanted to touch on before we jump in was Warp. James, what do you think of Warp? Do you want to give us an example of a card?
Yeah, so Warp's a bit more of a familiar style of mechanic, I guess. So Warp says the cards with Warp will all have a Warp cost. The warp cost is generally, but not always, cheaper than the casting cost. It says you may cast this card for its warp cost. If you do, you exile this creature at the beginning of the end step, then you may cast it from exile on a later turn. So basically, this lets you put the creature into play for a turn for cheap, and then it's going to leave play. You can cast it again for its normal casting cost. It's almost like you sort of do an evoke thing, but instead of it dying when you evoke it, it's like it's gone on an adventure, and you can cast it for its adventure cost later.
Yeah.
So for example, we've got Starbreach Whale here as one of the commons. It's 4 on a blue for 3/5 flying. When it enters the battlefield, you surveil 2, and you can warp for 1 on a blue. So one of the good things warp does to you, right, is you get to trigger any enter the battlefield effect twice, potentially, right? You get to trigger it when you cast it for its warp cost, and it goes into exile, and you can get your ETB again when you cast it normally. I think that's a very solid ability for Cube. There's some strong cards with warp I think will play fairly well. Nothing groundbreaking here. It's a bit like they've mashed together a couple of other mechanics they've done in the past, but I think it's going to play perfectly well.
Yeah, part of me thinks that they got the name first and then worked backwards. But no, I like warp. It is good. Like it does. Like in terms of homes, it will kind of feel similar to like a lot of the warp cards are either cards with like ETB effects, kind of like a Mole Drifter, that kind of effect, or it's cards that come in and help other ETB effects. So I think in terms of shells, we'll generally see them in things like Flicker decks. That will be the main thing to look out for if you're doing, if you like to look at the warp creatures. Also, like similar to Evoke, if you flicker a warped creature, it will come back in as a new permanent, so it will stay in play and a turn. That's just something nice you can do with some of the warp cards. It works how you want it to, like Evoke does. So those are some of the mechanics. There are a couple more in the set, but they are generally pretty straightforward, so we'll touch on them when they come up. But let's quickly go over how we're going to be evaluating cards today. For these set reviews, it's important to remember that we are comparing cards in this set to every card that has ever been printed before it. When we talk about cards, we're generally going to be talking about them in terms of what cubes they could see play in. We'll either be talking about them in terms of power level of cube, so you have like your vintage powered cube at the top with all the best and broken cards where things have to be quick and super efficient. And then as you go down the power level, you have your unpowered cubes, your more mid-powered cubes like Legacy and Modern cubes. Things start getting a bit slower, and then you end up with your more entry-level cubes and your budget cubes, where things don't have to be as fast, they don't have to be as broken. You can run cards that need a bit more time to do their thing. We'll also maybe talk about sizes of cubes. The rule here is that the larger the cube is, the more you're looking for multiples of the same effect. So if we say a card could see play in a 540 or a 720 cube, we're saying that there's probably a better version of this card out there, but if you want multiples, then you could look at running it as well. We'll also shout out where relevant if the cards we're talking about we think could make a splash in Peasant, which is a cube made up of commons and uncommons, or Pauper, which is a cube made up of just commons. For what it's worth as well, me and James both own our own cubes. James has a very high-powered vintage cube, and I have an unpowered vintage cube, which is a little slower and lower powered than James, but still runs most of the broken cards. And I have the Treat Yourself cube, which is a lot slower and is trying to do bigger, more impactful things, but later in the game. So if we mention our own cubes, that's what we'll be talking about. So with that out of the way, let's jump in to the set review. Let's start with white. First up, we have Cosmogrand Zenith. It is 2 and a white for a 2/4 creature human soldier. It has, whenever you cast your second spell each turn, choose 1. You can either create 2 1/1 white human soldier creature tokens, or put up as a counter on each creature you control. So I do like that if you play this on turn 4 and a cantrip, or like a cheap spell, you can get your tokens right away. That is quite nice. I also like that it's a token maker that can also be a win con. Like once you've made enough tokens, you can make them bigger is nice. And I like that it's a card that you can run in your token deck that also has crossover with +1/+1 counter decks. It ticks a lot of different boxes and a lot of different decks that white generally tends to be touching in, which is cool. The main issue I think with this card is that just white 3-drops is a really very competitive slot in most cubes. Like Adeline and Monastery Mentor, I think, do this effect, but like better. And now also Monastery Mentor is less than £1. I think this might struggle in lower powered cubes, but I do think that this is a very solid card. Like this will definitely be in the rotation on the Mitko Vintage Cube, and I think it will be fine. We are definitely seeing the an uptick in more and more cards printed with whenever you cast your second spell each turn, which is nice. It's just a solid way of design. It's not prowess, it's different, if that makes sense. But just play it with a bunch of cheap spells, and I think you'll be pretty good. And most cubes generally run a lot of 1-drop. So solid card. Nothing too exciting, but I think it's solid.
Yeah, I quite like this one. I think we've seen with the recent success of Corey Steelcutter that the multi-spelling condition is something you can definitely make work in Cube. And this has two different modes that are both pretty powerful, and they both synergize well with each other. Like if your first two triggers make tokens and then you start putting counters on them, that's a nice game plan, sort of self-contained in this card. I think the main question here is just where does it fit? Because if you just look at the modes, that would suggest this is meant to go in some sort of go wide creature deck. The problem with it in those decks is that whilst they might have a low enough curve to help you multi-spell each turn, they're just not going to be able to keep the cards flowing enough to cast 2 spells a turn, multiple turns in a row after you've cast this, which is really what you want to be doing to get your money back off this, right? If you're just all 1, 2, and 3 mana creatures, you will just run out of cards before you can do that. So I think really where I'm looking at this is some sort of like blue-white Jeskai spellsy deck. I think this could be really good. Like as a Mentor, I think this maybe alongside Mentor and things like Third Path Iconoclast can be and Corey Steelcutter. That sounds like a pretty nice basis for a deck with just all the cheap spells you can muster. Yet again, another thing that really, really goes up a notch in power level if you have some 0 mana cost spells in your deck. See Moxen not so much because you'll probably use Moxen to cast this early rather than trigger it for turn you cast it. But anything like Urza's Bauble, Mishra's Bauble, Gataxian Probe, any of that stuff is incredible with this because getting that trigger the turn you cast it is really, really powerful. But yeah, very, very solid cards. You say, I'm sure it will be in the new card slot in Modo Vintage Cube. We'll see if it sticks around, but I don't think it's a bad one.
Yeah, perfectly solid. I think it is just a lot of competition at that spot. All right, what do you think of our next card, James? What do you think of Lightstall Inquisitor?
Yes, this is a single white mana for a 2/1 creature angel wizard. Very weird to have a 1 mana. I did not realize this was an angel. There's some weird angel tribal nonsense going on in your cube. There's not a lot of 1 mana angels, so I guess it gets in. What does it do, though? It has vigilance, and when this creature enters, each opponent exiles a card from their hand and may play that card for as long as it remains exiled. Each spell cast this way costs 1 more to cast, and each land played this way enters tapped. So mostly what's going on here is it's a 1 mana 2/1. 1 mana 2/1s are good. We like them. They have 2 power. This taxing effect is really not worth a ton because your opponent gets to choose what card is exiled. It's not terrible, but there's just going to be a lot of spots where they can make choices where they're just not really hurt by this a ton, right? Like, for example, if they have a tap land in their hand, this effect does literally nothing. They exile the tap land, they play it, it enters tapped, it was going to enter tapped anyway. It does synergize a little bit with a few cards which are already played, like stuff like Aven Interrupter makes all the spells you cast from exile cost 2 more to cast, so that does stack with this, which is kind of nice. If you had a few of these effect, like stuff like this, Elite Spellbinder, etc., you could maybe consider running Dranith Magistrate as like a particularly hateful build around. That sounds quite fun. But in general, I think you're here if you want a Savannah Lion, and this is better than the Dragon Tamer you were running before, but it's really not that exciting otherwise.
I agree with that. I think this could be quite punishing on a mulligan if your opponent like mulls to 6 or something like that, and it's kind of a like this punishes like greedy decks. I think like decently. It's not like the most broken card, but I think it's solid. If you saw this in a cube, I don't think you would like think much against it. Like for me, actually, the main thing that kind of means it probably won't, or like I won't consider it in cubes is just like oddly just not a relevant creature type. Like, it's not a human, it's not an artifact, and it's not a legend. Those are kind of like, if I'm going to be theming my white aggressive creatures, it's normally one of those. And if you're just going for most efficient, then there's, I guess, generally more efficient. But again, like there isn't really too much wrong you can do with a 1-mana 2/1 with upside. Like, those will get played in cubes and they will be fine. But yeah. The first note I have is this is a solid card, and I think that kind of sums it up quite nicely.
Yeah, for sure. Never embarrassing, but never exciting either.
All right, let's keep the ball rolling. Next up, we have Reroute Systems. This is a single white for an instant. Choose one. Target artifact or creature gains indestructible until end of turn, or Reroute System deals 2 damage to target tapped creature. So I do like this. Like, the protection part is something I would like to run in queue, but normally just doesn't deserve a slot. Like, it's good at protecting key creatures, like something like an Oslet Pride or an Adeline, as I mentioned. Like, something that, if left unanswered, can just run away with the game. Like, if you can just dodge that first bit of removal, then it is quite nice. And obviously, it can also protect, like, a combo card if you're doing creature combos, if you're doing Kiki Chiki Splinter Twin, if you're doing, like, persist combos, that kind of thing. And then on top of that, the fact it is a solid removal spell is nice. Like obviously, this doesn't compare to, like, your swords or your paths. But a shock in white is solid. Like, it's not like effectively, this to me feels like a sideboard card that you can main deck. I think I quite like that. Like this isn't going to rip up trees. I think it's a cool card. Like I think I prefer it to, like, Oust or something like that kind of stuff. But, like, yeah, I think Reroute Systems is alright. Like it does, like, all these kind of cheap protection-y style cards do get better if you're doing, like, something that cares about cheap spells. So like we mentioned Cosmogran Zenith earlier, but also, like, the Feather the Redeemed, that kind of deck. Like, it does get better there. But yeah, fine card. It is an uncommon. Probably we'll see more play in Peasant Cube, but I could see myself playing this for a little bit until James yells at me.
I just sat up in my chair because I need to defend the honor of Oust now. Oust is great.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Oust kills everything. Oust deals with their 6/6. This
still kills a broadside bombardiers. Like, that's the main thing I want to kill with my 1-mana white spell.
Only once they've got an attack and get to throw something. This is but listen, modality is good. Part of the issue I have here, if this was an actual shock and it would shock anything, then I'd be into it. But only hitting a tapped creature means this is only really here for, I guess, for slower decks. But then the slower decks don't really want the protection spell as much. So I think there's a little bit of awkwardness there. Listen, it's not a terrible card. It does something against aggro and it does something against removal spells, and that's fine for 1 mana. I will say I get lower and lower on the protection spells that just give indestructible. There's just, there's so many of the removal spells. Like, it basically doesn't work against white removal most of the time, right? And it doesn't work against the blue bounce spells.
It works against the second copy of Reroute Systems.
That is true. You have owned that guy. Outside of that, please keep Oust in your cubes. Reasonable. And don't look at this card.
Okay.
Oust is so good. Have you ever just, like, ousted their 4-drop for 1 mana? And that it feels so good.
True. Fair. Right, but we have another removal spell next, James. What do you think of Seam Rip?
Yeah, so Seam Rip is a single white mana for an enchantment at uncommon. Says when this enchantment enters, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls with mana value 2 or less until this enchantment leaves the battlefield. You may think you have seen this card before, and it's because you have. It is called Portable Hole, except that was an artifact. Portable Hole's basically been in a ton of cubes ever since it came out.
It's been in mine since it got printed.
It's been in mine too. It's been in my powered cube. It's just that flexibility is really powerful. You can hit creatures, you can hit artifacts, you can hit enchantments. For just 1 white mana is really, really solid. I don't know that I'd want to double up on that effect very often. So I think the approach I would take is, if white cares more about enchantments than artifacts in your cube, then I would cut Portable Hole for this. If it cares more about artifacts, then I would keep Portable Hole, I think, is about where I'd end up.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah. It's been in my queue from the start, but I've also had sorry, Portable Hole's been in mine from the start, but that's because I've had a white X artifact deck in there the whole time. I would probably still run it if I didn't, but yeah, I agree. You only really want to run one. It's whatever takes your fancy, basically.
Yeah, for sure. Like, yeah, if you're doing like green white is Enchantress in my cube, then getting to cut Portable Hole for this card seems like a really big deal for that deck.
No, very solid. I'm just looking at the art on this. Is Sam Gway related to Rebecca Gway, and have they just taken their art style? Do you see that?
It is very similar, isn't it? It's really nice art, actually. I quite like it, yeah.
It's very pretty, but it is kind of copying someone's homework a little bit. But hey-ho, it's lovely it's nice to see it anyway.
Carrying on the family tradition, I suppose.
Exactly. But I'm assuming they're related, otherwise it's a massive coincidence. But,
yeah.
Okay. All right, let's keep it rolling. We're moving on to blue next, and we have Starfield Vocalist. This is 3 in a blue for a 3/4 creature human bard. It has, if a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. And it also is our first example of Warp. It has Warp for 1 and a blue. So effectively here we have Panharmonicon on a creature. So it can attack and block, which we like, but it can also die to a Doomblade, which we don't like. For me, this is very much if you're already running Panharmonicon in your cube, then you might be tempted to add another version of this effect. I'm thinking really only one, mainly we're here for the Flicker decks that would want this. Like, it could also be nice in a landfall deck, but really this is here to double up some ETBs on your Muldrifter or your Cloud of Fairies, that kind of thing. And in that deck, I do like the Warp ability on this, as it lets you kind of do your broken thing out of nowhere later in the game. Like, yes, you can run this out and hope it doesn't get killed, or the turn you need to pop off, you can pay 2 mana and then do your thing. Like, going this into Palace Jailer on turn 6 seems really nice. Like, there's a bunch of broken things you can do with this, which might be too slow for the most powerful cubes, but there's some more mid-rangey stuff here that could be good. Like, if you're a fan of combos, like going this Thassa's Oracle, if you have 6 cards left in your deck, could be fun. Or this, like, Imperial Recruiter, getting both parts of your creature combo could be quite nice. And there will be worlds where just going this, like, warping this on turn 2 and pitching Grief will just ruin your opponent's game plan. Like, that is pretty solid. Like, I think this is a cool card, but it's just not one for every cube. But I do think it is for cubes that want to go a little bit longer and kind of want to build up to some kind of big engine where Panharmonicon would normally be good. Yeah, what do you think, James? Yeah,
for sure. Basically a redundant Panharmonicon guy for your Flicker deck. It's cool that it does if you already have a bunch of Flicker effects in your deck, it does the thing where I can cast it for 2 mana, maybe get a trigger out of it, and I flicker this and get to keep it. I don't need to invest mana in recasting it. You're probably not going to actually invest your Ephemerate or whatever in doing that, but it might be really good if you have, say, a Brago in play where you can cast this, hit with your Brago, flicker it, and you just get to pay 2 mana for your 4 mana spell, basically, which is cool. Having said that, if you want another Panharmonicon for your blue-white flicker deck, like Elish Norn is just way more powerful than this card, right?
Yes.
That's a white one, and sure, it's a different color, but the flicker deck is blue-white, and that card is frankly pretty obscene. That's the one where it doubles all of your triggers off permanents, but also prevents your opponent's ETBs from occurring at all. Yeah, shockingly annoying to remove, actually, when you're looking down at your handful of removal spells that you now realize are all ETBs. This card is fine for that more sort of mid-power level of cube flicker deck, I guess.
But it's very much if you're doing a cool thing style of cube rather than here is my efficient A, B, C way of killing you. This doesn't fit into that. It fits into you're going big, you're going splashy, that kind of thing. And I think it could be fun.
Yeah, for sure. All right, next up, we have our first spacecraft of the day. We have a Synthesizer Lab Ship. This is a single blue mana for an artifact spacecraft. It has station, as all the spacecraft do. So you can tap creatures to put charge counters on it. That has 2 or more charge counters on it. It has, at the beginning of combat on your turn, up to one other target artifact you control becomes an artifact creature with base power and toughness 2/2 and gains flying until end of turn. And then if it has 9 or more charge counters on it, it is a 4/4 creature with flying and vigilance. I like that this is cheap, but it still honestly doesn't seem worth it to me, just because you actually need a fair amount to come together for this to be good in your opening hand, right? Like, I need to play this on turn 1 into like a 2-power creature on turn 2 to make it into a actually make it have rule stacks. But then I also need a like redundant artifact lying around that I can wake up into a 2/2 flyer every turn. And if I put all of this together, all I get is to attack you for 2 every turn. Like, that's just not a payoff that I'm interested in.
Got evasion.
Yeah. And then, like, maybe I make it a 4/4 after like a million turns, but I think we can do better, you know? But just play Savannah Lions. This is worse than Savannah Lions,
so
man.
The issue is for stations, I don't think we can do better. This is the one I'm the highest on. And like there is some upside. Like so why I'm highest on this is that at least it's cheap. Like, this will get into decks because it is a cheap artifact. Like, it is a tinker target. Like, it counts towards your constructs. It will get into decks. And then I do think once it's in a deck, like, because this can come out early, unlike all the other stations, like I think this is the only one. This is the cheapest spacecraft by quite a long way. I think there's just more opportunity cost with this one. Like, it's going to be around longer. You're going to have more time, I think, to do it. Like if you're in that deck, I'm thinking like you will have a treasure or an artifact land that's going to be pretty easy to animate and just jump and either get in for some damage, or why I'm kind of all right with this one is like say we get that to 2, we do it once, we then can like if it's like a treasure token that we've animated that is crewing this, then we haven't really invested that much into it. I know that we are effectively giving up 9 or 10 worth of damage in the air to do that. But like there are worlds where sometimes we can't attack with a 2/2 flyer, it might not get through. Where just like if all we have to do is tap a creature once and then like some artifact we have lying around makes this bigger, then I'm kind of okay with it. I'm not like excited. I'm not like, I don't think it's broken, but I think just like I run plenty of cheap artifacts in my cube because they are cheap artifacts, and I think this it does have that. It has that threshold, and like if I was going to test the like. This goes in cubes. And the one thing I will say is my wife is excited for this for vintage, and she is often right about things like that. So if I wanted to test a spacecraft, this would be the one. If I open one, I might try it. We'll see how that goes.
Like, it would be good if it could animate itself, you know?
It would be yes, it would actually be.
Then it would be really good. But really good. It would be quite good. But it feels quite hard to be attacking for damage with this on turn 2, right? Mm-hmm. Which, like, you just need so much to come together for that. Like, it's almost impossible. You can unless you have like a 0 mana artifact. So if we're not attacking on turn 2, then we're kind of not getting our money for playing a supposedly a good 1 mana threat, right? And it's not that powerful later in the game. Like, you have to put a bunch of you'd have to give up on damage to make it into a good later game threat. So I don't really see where we're getting paid for this. And I see a whole bunch of scenarios where it does straight up nothing. Like if we draw this and not a cheap creature to station, then it does nothing. If we draw this and we draw the creature that stations it, but we don't have an artifact lying around, then it does nothing. Which is like, I can be okay with cards being conditional. That can be fine, but it means that the payoff has to be better when it works, and the payoff just isn't that good, I think.
No, I do agree. So the thing I'll say is I'm looking at my artifact aggro section, which is quite deep and it is much bigger than the average cube. And I'm looking at things like, I mean, Hangerback Walker, Walking Ballista, they'd be fine to animate because they'd keep the counters. So you turn it into a flying beater, that's not nothing. Like I'm looking at Arcbound Ravager, animate like turning that into a 2/2 flyer, it'll keep the counters on top. That's solid. Like I'm looking at I'm looking at Patchwork Automaton. It'll keep the counters on top and a flying like that's. I think I'm not saying this is a fantastic card, but I think this is worth a test. I think that this is such a easy thing to go in. Like if the best thing that happens to it is it's tinkered away into something else, then it's at least done its job. But
okay, let me give you a comparison card here, right? For your blue-white artifacts beatdown deck. Do you rather have this, or would you rather have Court Homunculus?
Well, yes, Court Homunculus.
Yeah.
But I love Court Homunculus, James. Look at that little lad.
Okay, cool. That's fine. As long as we are clear on where this ranks in the power rankings. We are
ranking it below Court Homunculus.
Versus like random common creatures from 10 years ago.
But it's got set mechanic, James. All right. Let's move on. Let me take it away with our first black card of the day. Next up, we have Tragic Trajectory. This is a single black mana for a sorcery that says target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn, and it has Void. Void is also a new mechanic, but it's nice and straightforward. It says that creature gets -10/-10 until end of turn instead if a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn or a spell was warped this turn. This is a nice take on Tragic Slip. Like, yes, you lose the instant speed, but 1 mana to kill a 2 toughness creature is still very solid. Like, we will still run that in Cube. And Tragic Slip is basically only really usable if you trigger its Morbid ability. Like, meaning that secretly Tragic Slip is an aristocrat card. Like, with this, you don't have to trigger Void for it to be good. Like killing creatures with 2 toughness are real creatures. Like I mentioned, Broadside Bombardiers, like Gut. These are real things you want to be killing, and this does it without you having to worry about a non-land permanent leaving play. What also this is going for is triggering off of non-land permanent means it works with things like treasures, with blood, with clues, all this kind of stuff as well. It doesn't just have to go in an aristocratic kind of shell. And obviously there's a lot of competition in black removal spells, but I think this is a solid card and I think it deserves a test. Like, just the floor is just so low of just giving a creature, of just taking out a relevant creature. And then the upside is you can take out the biggest thing on the board as well if you do a little bit of work, basically. Yeah,
for sure. I quite like this card. It's, I think, in the sort of 1 mana black removal spells, it's like Fatal Push is S tier, and then there's a variety of other ones you can play if you want one more, right? So you compare with something like Disfigure, right, which is basically you don't get the -10/-10, but it's instant speed. I think they're probably comparable power levels because instant speed is really big on this effect. But I think it's cool to include the version like this where it actually has some synergy with some other stuff in your cube, right?
Yeah.
I think this is in a nice spot where this is playable in any deck, right? You would put this in your blue-black control deck with hardly ever any other permanents and just pay black for sorcery speed -2/-2, and that's fine. But there will also be decks where this is excellent because it's because you have a bunch of treasure, a bunch of blood, a bunch of creatures are dying, whatever it might be. And in the mid game, it's just going to be like reliably 1 mana hard removal, which is phenomenal. I think just having your removal spells not all being exactly the same in every deck just adds a nice bit of texture to the cube, right? And I think that sort of thing just makes the drafting experience a little more interesting. So I quite like this spell for that reason. I think it's quite powerful.
Yeah, I'd agree. We'll kind of get onto it when we get onto some of the red spells, but like I do it quite a lot with like red burn spells. Like you kind of tailor them to what your cube is trying to do. Like, again, like I mentioned, I have artifacts, so I have a Pyrite spell bomb in there, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I could see tailoring it a little bit like that. It isn't really like generally with the black removal spells, I've just generally gone efficient, but yeah, I do like that. That's quite nice.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Next up in black, we have Umbral Collar Zealot. This is 1 black for a 3/2 creature human cleric at uncommon. It says sacrifice another artifact or creature, surveil 1. 3 sack outlets are really good, and this one is kind of priced to move, to be honest. Compare this to something like Viscera Seer, which is the like 1 mana 1/1, which which has sack a creature to scry one. See, if you were going sort of pure combo aristocrats, then you'd rather just have a 1-mana spell. But if you're the aristocrats beatdowny deck, which sometimes does a combo thing, you'd way rather have this card, right? Because this is a 2-mana 3/2. It's a perfectly respectable body. It's going to do stuff in the game. It's going to attack. It's going to block. It's going to be a relevant piece of cardboard. And then is still a free sack outlet when you want to Blood Artist your opponent to death. That's a really nice place to be. Also, the aristocrat decks often really care about fueling their graveyard. So having Surveil versus Scry is really nice. And sacking artifacts is a pretty big part of it for some decks, you know? We've seen a move in that direction with stuff like Marionette Apprentice, the like Blood Artist, but also triggers off artifacts. Having that artifact sacrificing thing is now just a thing in quite a lot of cubes. So having this be a sack outlet for your artifacts is quite nice too. So it could maybe even see play in like a food deck for that reason, right? Can just stack up a bunch of triggers when you sack all your artifacts at once. Yeah, I quite like this. It's also quite nice with the Surveil that if you're doing the persist thing, not all of those combos actually kill the opponent on the spot, right? Like if you're doing it with Viscerous here, it's and say a Kitchen Finks, then you're not killing your opponent. You just get a bunch of Scries. This doesn't kill your opponent either, but you get a bunch of Surveils, and therefore you get to stock up your graveyard and maybe like Dread Return or something that turn to kill them that way. So yeah, I think this card has like quite a few little things going for it, and I could see it seeing play. Certainly in Peasant Cube, it seems very powerful, but in plenty of other cubes as well, I think.
Yeah, 100%. Like, Surveil is a massive upgrade on things like Scry, which you see I've seen a couple of times on some sack outlets, and like, especially in black, where you tend to find like sometimes in cubes they run a lot of like recursive black 1 and 2 drops, like things like Bloodghast or creatures of that kind of ilk. Like this gets really good with that because like it's you can put it into the bin, then recast it, and then sack it, and just keep filling up your bin again and again. That's pretty nice. And like, yeah, I agree that kind of like, I think I like this more than some of the 3-drop ones, like Yahenni or Woe Strider. Just like, yes, you lose some abilities with them, but just 2 mana is a lot less. Like, I do quite like if I was still running Yahenni or Woe Strider, I think I'd probably cut them for this, just because just from a mana efficiency point of view. Like Yawgmoth's kind of it's onto itself basically, but when I came back to playing Magic, this would have been a rare, James. Like, or maybe like yeah, I like this card. I think it's really solid.
Theirs aren't allowed flavor text now, though, and this has room for flavor text. So
I see. Yeah.
Common only. Yeah, no, I like this way more than Yahenni. I think like that card kind of sucks, but I think. But yeah, like I could see like this over Woe Strider seems like a pretty good place to be.
All right, we're moving on to red. Next up, we have Depth Shaker Titan. It is 5 red for a 5/5 artifact creature robot. It has, when this creature enters, any number of target non-creature artifacts you control become 3/3 artifact creatures. Sacrifice them at the beginning of the next end step. It also has each artifact creature you control has melee, which means whenever a creature with melee attack, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. For each opponent you attack this combat, and it also gives them trample and haste. So that shockingly, this is a commander card. Effectively, whenever an artifact creature you control attacks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. That's the TLDR for that. So, I know this is a very commander card, but I do think that this is cool. This is kind of like the red Cyberdrive Awakener, which in itself is like a Crater Hoof win con for your make a bunch of artifact token deck. The Awakener animates non-creature artifacts and makes them 4/4 flyers. No haste, so you do need to have had tokens on an earlier turn. So as a hoof, I do think this is worse than the Awakener, but this does have upsides. The damage output on this is the same. Like your treasure will still attack as a 4/4 because of the melee ability that I mentioned. And this also gives other artifact creatures melee, trample, and haste as well. So it works with if you have other artifact creatures, it's not as dead as the Awakener. It's like the Awakener does nothing to your artifact creatures, whereas this will give them trample, haste, and +1/+1 when they attack, which is good. Having said that, 7 mana is a lot, and this is not for most cubes. Effectively, I think this falls into if you are already running Cyberdrive Awakener in your slower cube where you have time to get to 7 mana and build a board state, and basically you're looking for a way of pushing damage through, like a big splashy way of winning the game. Like I will probably test this in my Treat Yourself cube because I have Cyberdrive Awakener in there as a way of killing people with like food tokens or clues and stuff. And this is another version of that effect. I think that's fine there. Like, is it the most efficient? No. Is it cool? Yes. So I'm probably going to give it a go for that reason.
Yeah, I can certainly see this killing some people. It's for a cube of a more leisurely pace, I think. 7 mana's a lot, and generally with 7 drops, if you've gone to the effort of getting a 7 drop onto a battlefield, you really need it to very reliably do the thing, right? And yes. This has further conditionalities on top of being able to get a 7 drop onto the battlefield.
Exactly. It's 4 cubes that you do the big thing and there's still some game afterwards, not here is my big thing, I win, that kind of deck.
Exactly. Yeah. It could be a cool thing to like welder into or something, though, you know?
That is quite fun. I do like that.
It is kind of unfortunate that like the main sort of artifact token that red makes is treasures, and if you crack the treasures to cast this, then the treasures aren't there to attack them, right? It's a little bit unfortunate, but I could see it doing some stuff in the right cube.
Yeah, I think this card is cool, but this is going nowhere near my regular cube where I'm trying to be efficient and like kill people with like 2 and 3 drops. Like,
yeah, for sure.
Like the average CMC of my Treat Yourself cube is 4, so this is perfect.
Yeah. If your cube contains 2 drops more aggressive than Wall of Omens, then this might not be for you.
Very fair, very fair. But the next card you added, James, I think this one's quite cool. What do you think of a Vendo Brush Razor?
Yeah, so this is 2 and a red for a 2/2 creature insect warrior. It says, whenever you sacrifice a non-token permanent, exile the top card of your library. During your turn, as long as you've sacrificed a non-token permanent this turn, you may play cards exiled with this creature, and you can tap it and sacrifice a land to add red. So listen, this is a 3-mana 2/2 that doesn't have an enter the battlefield effect, which kind of disqualifies it from some cubes. But moving on to the other cubes, where you're allowed to play this sort of nonsense and get away with it. I think this is actually quite a nice little engine piece, especially if you're doing anything in the green-red lands space, or green-red X. Really, we're not really about being 2 colors in those decks. I think in that deck, this can be a really nice little value engine, right? Firstly, it lets you just sacrifice your lands, get extra mana, draw yourself cards, and then probably recur the lands later. That's really nice. It fuels the mana to play the cards you exile with it. It will also give you triggers just sacking your lands for any other purpose. So you could go quite big with this potentially, right? If you have just a sack outlet for your land, something like a Zervan Orb or a Sylvan Safekeeper, you could go like, sack all my lands, exile a whole bunch of cards, play a bunch of cards, then play one of the like Splendid Reclamation type effects, get my lands back, do it all over again. You can potentially just go through your whole deck doing that. That's pretty cool. Then there's also... it's quite nice that if you hit cards you can't play this turn because you're out of mana, you can play them next turn if you just sack a land again. Because it says you can, as long as you've sacrificed a non-token permanent this turn, you may play cards exiled. So you get sort of store the cards for later, obviously assuming your 2/2 continues to survive. There's also, I think that's the deck it's best in, but it I think has non-zero application in, say, an Aristocrats deck. Because it is just non-token permanent. It doesn't have to be a land. In those decks, you can... Obviously, the non-token part is unfortunate, but, you sack your cheap value creatures. You'll trigger this. You'll be drawing cards. And those decks tend to be have a fairly low curve, so sacrificing your land for mana is maybe not the worst thing. But yeah, I think in those decks you would want a pretty low curve, because if you're exiling a bunch of cards to play this turn, it's not so good if they're all 4 and 5 drops. Yeah, I think in the sort of cube where you can get away with playing this sort of value engine, I think this is actually quite strong.
I do like this card. It's got very much like Orcish Lumberjack vibes to it, and kind of like one important thing to mention is like you can still tap the land for mana before you sack it. So effectively, you are still up 3 with this. Like that is quite nice. And like, yeah, I think it's like this is definitely better in cubes with like fetch lands and that kind of stuff. But like, yeah, Aristocrats will also be solid as you mentioned. But like, I know most people don't like sacking their lands, but like, if on turn 4 we can cast a 6-drop ahead of curve, that's still pretty good. Like this is still like solid ramp. Like again, yeah, this isn't for every cube, but I think it's cool. I like. Do you think you need to be recurring lands? Like this goes really hard with like the Gitrog monster, but like, is that the kind of shell you were thinking of, or kind of like, do you think you need a Crucible effect to make this card really good, or is it just like it's just good enough with the card advantage, basically?
I think one of the things I like about this card is that I think it's good in quite a lot of different shells. I think the shell that I think does the most exciting things with this is the like sack all my lands to a Zervanov. I've drawn like 8 cards, then I return them all with a Splendid Reclamation. I do it all again. I can go through my whole deck and like Foracle you or something. That sounds dope. But in the I think it is also really solid in just like, I play this on turn 3. On turn 4, I like sack a land, make some mana, play like the land I hit off the top, cast my 6-drop. That's pretty good. And then later on in that game, I can just start cashing in my lands for cards and mana to play off the top. And I think that adds up to it being enough. And then, yeah, like, and even if you're just like, I've got some fetch lands and a wasteland and whatever, like you are just getting some value out of this, and that's pretty nice. Like, there's a lot of ways to sack non-token permanents. It's not a big requirement to meet, and it does fuel itself. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different places you can go with this card.
Yeah, this one's cool. I do like it. Yeah, good find there, James. Nice. All right, let's keep it going. Next up, we have Caveron. God, I'm butchering that. Caveron Harrier is a single red for a 2/1 artifact creature robot soldier. It has, whenever this creature attacks, you may pay 2 generic. If you do, create a 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token that's tapped and attacking. Sacrifice that token at the end of combat. So similar to, we talked about single mana 2/1s in white, they also have play in red. I like that this has game in multiple decks. Like, as a Savannah Lion, mono red will play it. Yes, it's not Ragavan, but there is still room for cards that aren't Ragavan in cube decks. Like, later in the game, when you don't have a play, you can pay the mana to make an additional attacker, which is solid. It means it's not dead as a draw later on. Also, as a mana sink, like, red generally has the most free spells of any color. I'm thinking like things like Fury, Mind Collapse, Fire Blast, and Pyrokinesis. So, like, it can often just have spare mana lying around because it can do other things. Like, it can still be progressing its game plan without actually tapping mana. So this there, I think, is quite nice. And the fact that it makes a token means it has potential in a token deck, and as a cheap enabler, if you care about having a bunch of tokens in play. And then, importantly, the fact that it's also a cheap artifact that makes more artifacts means it can go, obviously, in the artifact deck. Like, any deck that cares about having a number of artifact tokens in play is really solid. And also, the red version of the deck tends to care about sacrificing artifacts a little bit more. Like, I'm thinking things like Mayhem Devil will really like this card because effectively it's fuel for it every turn. Also, obviously, we have the like I mentioned Broadside Bombardiers earlier. This does seem pretty solid as just giving you a free thing, or not free, but like you don't have to have a card in hand to make a thing every turn to just fling with the Broadside Bombardiers. That seems pretty cool. Yeah, that's quite a lot of options for a 1-drop, and I think that's really nice. Like, I'm probably going to test this. Like, it's an uncommon, but my guess is it will see play in more cubes than just Peasant. Like, I think it's pretty solid.
Yeah. We've done it, guys. Broadside Bombardiers is finally good.
Playable.
Yeah, no, I think this is solid. It's the The mana you've got to pump in to make 4/2/1 means you're not really like doing this on turn 2 very much, right? I think you should mostly be viewing this as red for a 2/1 artifact creature, which is a really good start for an aggressive artifact deck. But that's already pretty much close to good enough. Sometimes you'll make the token later, and that's fine. I do kind of wish the tokens stuck around until like the end step, like like the mobilized tokens do, for example. So the fact you sacrifice at the end of combat means it's kind of harder to use it for like sacrificing for value, because you don't get to your main phase with the token, right? But having said that, yeah, there's not a lot wrong with this card. It's I will say that there are a lot of quite good red aggressive artifact cards now, so I also wouldn't be shocked if it didn't end up making the cut.
No, definitely. I think it's if you have things like a token deck, if you have things like an artifact deck, if you have these things already there, then it kind of slots in as like a nice little crossover piece quite nicely, or quite easily, basically. But yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, what do you think of our next card, James? I believe it's called Memorial Vault. We're working with the translation, so if we're wrong, blame MTG Goldfish, not us.
Yeah, that seems like a fair disclaimer. We'll go with Memorial Vault. So Memorial Vault is 3 and a red for an artifact. You can tap Memorial Vault and sacrifice another artifact to exile the top X cards of your library, where X is 1 plus the sacrificed artifact's mana value. You may play those cards this turn. Again, this is obviously one for slower cubes, but I think it's really cool there. Have you ever cast a Frogmite, Daniel?
Not in a hot matty. I think in Bloomburrow Seal. Does that count?
That does definitely count. But this with affinity cards is really cool, right? You you sack your Frogmite, you see 5 cards, and you can cast as many as you can this turn. That's really cool. You really want to have a low curve for this to be good. So think about the sort of deck that would want to run something like Experimental Synthesizer. Those sorts of decks, I think, will really like this. Like low curve, lots of artifacts in play early. And then you can cast some affinity cards of the thing that really make this pop. But even just, I sack my treasure, I see 1 card. That's also pretty good. So yeah, I like this as a value engine for an artifact deck in a slower cube, basically. You can't put this in fast cubes. No one will play it because they'll already be dead if they tried to.
Yeah, you do need a density of artifacts in there. And yeah, I'll be honest with you, I was not that high on this card, but I think the affinity line is quite hot. Like, I do quite like that. Like I am this is not going to go in my main cube. Like I am testing a bunch of affinity stuff in there now because I've just reached that density of like the artifact deck will easily have 4 artifacts on turn 2 or 3, that kind of stuff. So Memorial Vault. If I was doing this in my slower cube, I think it could have a place. Yeah. It does seem a bit commandery, but I think it's cool.
That's fair. But you could sacrifice your Mirror Enforcer and see 8 cards. Just say
that. That's fair. There are more affinity creatures now. Like they keep printing more. Like Frog Mirror Enforcer got printed last year. There is a bunch. Yeah, maybe it is pretty hot.
That's true. Yeah, I think maybe it's just if you're doing the affinity thing in your cube, then this could be cool to try.
Yeah, you can do it the turn it comes down, which is nice. So, okay. Interesting one. We do like it. All right, let's keep it rolling, James. Next up, we have Plasma Bolt. It's a single red for a sorcery. Plasma Bolt deals 2 damage to any target. It has a void. Plasma Bolt deals 3 damage instead if a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn or a spell was warped this turn. So single red mana removal spells obviously have a lot of competition, and base level sorcery speed shock is not really where we're at. But the potential for this to be 3 damage for a single mana is good. Like, yes, we already have Chain Lightning, but I'd be tempted to test this over maybe something like Firebolt. Like, in the majority of cubes, these burn spells are almost a flex spot, as we kind of mentioned earlier. Like, you can run cards that work with the archetypes that you're running. Like, I mentioned because I have an artifact deck, I'm running Pyrite Spellbomb, but also because I have like a Delirium deck, I'm running like Tarfire and Unholy Heat. Like, this is a little more generic than those, but like it does, like if you're doing stuff with aristocrats, then there is a little bit more there. You're going to be triggering that 3 damage ability a bit more reliably. In those higher power level cubes where you generally run cards that are more efficient, the fact that it's 3 damage there, like more likely there, means I think that it could be a better fit. So maybe test this there. What do you think, James? Like what is the highest kind of cube you think Plasma Bolt could see playing?
It's always difficult with these, like you say, what could you see play in? Because if you put it in powered cube, then
yes,
sometimes people would put it in their deck, right? Because they want a shock, because they want to kill their opponent's Vagabonds or whatever. But there are just better options, is the thing, right? Like, this isn't better than Flame Slash, this isn't better than Chain Lightning, this is very much not better than Lightning Bolt. So I think it's more just a question of tuning to what power level of removal do you want for your cube, and to what extent do you want people to have to work for their 1 mana deal free, And the thing that is nice about this, unlike stuff like Fiery Impulse or whatever, is this also goes face. So it works for to get a little bit more burn in for your aggressive decks as well. Yeah, this is solid. It's not exciting. Sorcery speed hurts a lot. I think obviously there are better options, but it's tailing your removal for your cube. And if you're building one of the themes you're building around enables this very well, then maybe it's something you're interested in. If you're like big in on the treasures deck or whatever.
Solid, makes sense. All right, we have a couple more red cards. What do you think about Rust Harvester, James? I think this one is Wall-E. Have you ever seen that film?
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah, look at him go. He's it's bad times again for Wall-E. This is more like Wall-E at the start of the film, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is 1 mana, a single red mana for a 1/1 artifact creature robot. Wall-E would not be a red card though. Is the only. He's not very aggressive, Wall-E, is he? Yeah, I think he would be white.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much a pacifist, I think, Wall-E. Sorry, Rust Harvester is what we were talking about, is a single red mana for a 1/1 artifact creature robot. It has menace. Wall-E definitely doesn't have menace either. He's the least menacing little robot I've ever seen. But Rust Harvester has menace, and you can pay 2 and tap it, and exile an artifact card from your graveyard to put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Then it deals damage equal to its power to any target. Listen, if you can keep activating this a few turns in a row, it's really powerful. It will take over a game. Like the first time deals 2 something, then it deals 3, then it deals 4. Like you're really stacking up the. If you're killing creatures with those activations, that's going to take over the game for you. And that's a lot for a 1 mana card. The thing is, you just aren't most games going to be able to activate this every turn. Artifacts aren't like instants and sorceries. They don't tend to just go to the graveyard by themselves when you play them. So for that reason, I think probably how you want to use this is you're into like an aggressive artifacts deck, and you're kind of in for a 1 mana 1/1 menace artifact creature. And then later in the game, those decks are quite good at just buffing their creatures. Like, you put an equipment on this, you put some +1/+1 counters on this, whatever it might be. And then even if you're just getting like 1 or 2 activations later in the game, you can make those activations count for a lot more because you have buffed the power of this in some other way, right? Like it's got a bone splitter on it or whatever it might be. And I think in that scenario, this could be pretty solid. But yeah, also really nice if you do have, say, some, I don't know, Urza's Bauble or whatever it might be, or the maybe like a welding jar, the Zero makes you regenerate, just like some artifacts that naturally go through a graveyard, maybe like a Pyrite Spell Bomb. Any of that stuff is really good with this because it will just give you those activations.
Yeah, definitely. I'm quite high on this card. I'm going to be testing it in mine, but like I have a really deep artifact section in mine, and I have that aggressive deck that you mentioned, and like in that deck, just like the creatures are artifacts and they go to the graveyard too. They are food for this that can kind of help push it through later on. And yeah. I think you really nailed it with the buffing up its power. Like equipment great, but I run things like Steel Overseer and like Scorpus Lord in my cube, and they seem really solid. But this is just like it becomes like a bit of like inevitability if your opponent is kind of because it is an aggressive deck. If they kind of stabilize and you can't push through damage anymore, you can then just like effectively it becomes a Grim Lavamancer. You just kind of ping them out over a couple of turns, and that's what does the last 6 points of damage, that kind of thing. Like, yeah, for most cubes, probably not. If I'm honest with you, like I do think you need to be really deep with artifacts. Like every card James has mentioned, I have in my cube. I also have things like Blood Fountain. I have Artifact Lands, this kind of stuff. Like I'm going very deep on the artifact theme, and there I think this is going to be great because in that deck, artifacts are like instants and sorceries. Like there's enough of the buggers.
Sure,
but yeah,
sure.
But yeah, I think in most cubes, like it will struggle to work just because you need that density. But yeah, I'm very hot on this adorable little Rust lad.
Yeah, it does seem good because when it works, it's way better than Lava Man, right? Like Lava Man just deals 2. This deals 2, then 3, then 4. Or if you're buffing its power in other ways, then way more than that.
Yeah, this one's sweet. We love this one. All right, we're ramping up the mana value. Next up, we have Tanuk Steadfast Second. It is 2 red for a 3/5 legendary creature, Karvu Pilot, which is a vibe. It has other creatures you control have haste, and artifact cards and red creature cards in your hand have warp, 2, and a red. So I think this is really cool, and I do like this card. So being limited to red creatures just off the bat will mean that it's not going to see play in a large amount of cubes. But like as a bonus sneak attack, that is nice. Like this gives the things we warp in haste, which is exactly what warp needs. So if you warp in a big red creature, it can attack. It is like a sneak attack for 3 mana. Like for that, we do already have a card that does that, which doesn't see that much play anymore. Perforos Bronze Blooded is very similar to this. But the main difference is that this can put in any artifact. They don't have to be creatures. So with this, you can cheat in a Portal to Phyrexia and get that ETB effect, which is quite nice. I have played Perforos as a bonus copy of Sneak Attack in my cube in the past as another Sneak Attack. And when I was doing that, most of my like big reanimate and big cheat targets became red or artifacts. But we've moved so far beyond that, I think this is going to struggle because, like, yes, Atali Primal Conqueror is great, and yes, Trumpeting Carnosaur is really nice. But because those decks are like I did a whole episode recently on big cheat targets, and like they're all different colors. They're not just red and they're not just artifacts. Like because Flash is so great, because Reanimator is always a thing. This doesn't overlap as nicely with those, and so for the highest power level cubes, I don't think this is going to get there. But like I could see in like a more middle powered level or a budget powered level cube, if this is reasonably priced, like it is a mythic, but it's not a Final Fantasy card, so it could be quite cheap. Like this and like Sneak Attack, which is like less than £3 nowadays, and like so's Perforos. Like those 3 could be the cornerstones of a really solid like red based cheat deck that can kind of go into any kind of like mid powered level or budget cube. I think this would be a really cool card to run. Like the effect is awesome. Like I love Sneak Attack; it's one of my favorite cards. That kind of effect is cool, and it is just some redundancy there. The main issue with this card, as I mentioned, is just that the things you're putting in a cube isn't going to have enough big red things to make this worth it most of the time.
The thing that's kind of tricky with this card, right, is that if you want to play and activate it the same turn, and that's 7 mana, so that's pretty tough. So mostly the game plan is going to be play it, pass the turn, hope it survives. And that's fine, but that means it's just not that reliable. So it's probably not reliable enough that you can put a bunch of big stuff in your deck with the plan of cheating it in with this, right? Because
with just
if
this,
you're like if you're have your Portal to Phyrexia in hand ready to go, and you cast this on turn 2 and on turn 4, and then they just kill it, then your Portal is now pretty stuck, right? So I think, it feels like a little bit clunky to me. Maybe you could use it in the way of because warp also is kind of a value thing. If you just have good ETBs, right? Maybe you can try and just use it with ETB creatures, but it does seem kind of clunky to me.
I mean, I am kind of up for just playing Pyrogoyf a bunch of times.
That does sound fun, yeah.
That's kind of all right. I'm in for that. Okay. Yeah, it's fair. I didn't actually think of the ETB. Actually, Trumpeting Carnosaur is actually really good then, because you will get it twice, so that is kind of hot, actually.
Yeah, something.
This is our first legendary Carvu as well. That's also fun to see. I didn't know Carvus were in this set until we started reading the cards out loud, so that's fun.
Oh, well, at least one of them is.
All right, we have one more red card for you all, James. And it's actually, I'm going to say, similar to this one. What do you think of Terminal Velocity?
Yeah, so Terminal Velocity is 4 red for a sorcery. It says you may put an artifact or creature card from your hand onto a battlefield. That permanent gains haste, and when this permanent leaves the battlefield, it deals damage equal to its mana value to each creature. And at the beginning of your end step, you sacrifice that permanent. This is really powerful when you combine it with a big creature. The issue I have is, right, do you want to play a 6-drop that is only good when you have another very expensive card? Because this isn't so powerful. Like, you're not doing something so ahead of the curve here that you're... that it, to me, really justifies the putting a cheat target in your deck. Like, at 5, I'd be really into this, but 6 feels like a little bit much to me for this effect. Basically, like it's a through the reach where you get potentially a sweeper on the way out, right? Yeah, it's powerful. I just feel like combo cards that themselves cost 6 mana is kind of tough.
Yeah, like it wants to go into a cube where like it's slow enough that you're through the breaching a turn later, basically. But then what are you putting in at that mana? Like,
yeah,
it's like in that kind of environment, big Emrakul is going to be too good. Like there'll be some other big Eldrazi, that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think it's just too expensive. Like for 6 mana, can we just cast the Trumpeting Carnosaur or I'm going to say it, James, even the Inferno Titan would be hotter.
Yeah. It's a good summon Kajuta for that much mana.
Like the one, go with me on this. Again, this might be more commandery, but okay. So what if we are doing it for the sweeping value, and what if instead of 6 mana, put in something bigger? We put in something like a memory jar. Is that good enough? Actually, we still need the magic cast
cool,
as well.
Actually, because we don't. It doesn't have to be sacrificed at the end step to get the sweeping, right? So you can put jar in, crack jar, kill everything. The problem is you've spent 6 mana, so you don't have anything to cast the cards you jar into. I'm not sure about this, to be honest. Yeah. Yeah, all seems a bit tough. It is kind of good, I guess, for if you put in, for example, a Wildspine Worm, then when you sacrifice it in your end step, I think you can put the triggers on the stack in what order you want, right? So you can have the sweeper resolve first, and then you get your 3/5/5s. I think this is still just way worse than casting a Through the Breach for 1 less mana.
No, I think that's fair. My gut is, so with Tanuk, I was talking about a red cheat deck in a cheaper, like in a more budget cube. I think this would be fine there as well. Like,
yes, I think this is way better than Tanuk for what it's worth.
Fair, yes, I guess it. The color restriction part really, or not having a color restriction with this really does help this card. I think it opens the door to way more big swingy things.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, we're moving on to green. Next up, we have Baloth Prime. It is 3 and a green for a 10/10 creature beast. It enters with 6 stun counters on it, which, as a reminder, if a permanent with a stun counter would become untapped, remove a stun counter from it instead. It also has, whenever you sacrifice a land, create a tapped 4/4 green beast creature token and untap this creature. And on top of that, it has pay 4 and sacrifice a land, you gain 2 life. So this is another really cool card from this set. We're not here for that stun counter part, really, if I'm honest with you, although this being another target for Mirage Mirror is quite fun, as it's already in play and becomes a copy of this creature, which is kind of cool. Like, if you're running Mirage Mirror for some Marit shenanigans, this is a nice other thing you can do with it. But we are mainly here as this does a decent Titania Protector of Argoth impression. as in it's a creature that makes beefy attackers whenever we sack a land. So when we're doing our Zuran Orb Crucible of Worlds style of loops, this is a cool way of actually winning the game once we have those loops in play, up and running. Those decks are very fun, and having some extra redundancy for it is really nice, especially if you're in a larger cube running this kind of deck, where you might want specifically 2 Titanias as a way of winning the game in that kind of deck. The activated ability to pay for and sack a land, I think, is solid, but is more of a backup if you need a creature rather than the main goal with this. I do personally think you need more than just fetch lands to make this good. Like, this isn't going to go in a deck or even really in a cube if you're only planning on triggering it by either paying mana for it in the card or fetch lands. Like, I think you need Crucible effects. You need things like Zuran Orb, ways like Orcish Lumberjack, like the other new card we mentioned, like ways of sacrificing lands on top of that. But with those bits, I think this is actually going to be a pretty solid card. And I do really like Titania. I love that deck, and I think this is a nice bonus one if you really want to go deep and make it make land sacrificing and moving them around zones its whole archetype.
Yeah, for sure. I think Titania is a really cool card. I think this is it does a lot of different things. I think this is great redundancy for one of the things that Titania does really well, which is the cast my Titania, or in this case, cast Baloth Prime. I have a Zuran Orb in play. In your end step, I sack all of my lands. I don't need to cast more spells because I'm going to attack you with 20 power worth of creatures on your next turn, and you're going to be dead. I think that part it does really well. Titania is a much more flexible card because it's also a strong value card. It also has a mode of like pick up my strip mine you. I made a 5/3 and killed your land. That's really good. This doesn't do that. It's not a value card. I think it really needs a way to proactively sack your land. I think all the best things you can do with this involve sacrificing all of your lands very quickly, to be honest. I think that's kind of where you want to be. I have very little interest in paying 4 mana to activate this ability. But both players could start the game with a Pithing Needle naming Baloth Prime. It would not greatly affect my evaluation of the card. But yeah, I think thing A you want to do with this is definitely the Zuran Orb Sylvan Safekeeper thing. Also pretty good, just like Crucible and a fetch land, or Crucible and a wasteland or a strip mine. Also very powerful with this. Worth flagging as well, by the way, we in this podcast, when we're doing our set reviews, we generally only talk about the cards we think are going to see play in a pretty wide range of cubes. So when there's a big theme, like there's a sacrificing lands theme in this set, we generally just pick out the best few cards which we think are gonna see play in the most cubes. But if you have a cube that is going really deep on doing land stuff and recurring the lands from your graveyard, do take a full look through the spoiler for this set for the green card specifically, because there's quite a lot in there. We've picked out ones we think are going to see sort of wide-ranging play, but there's if you're going really deep, there's a few more good options in there.
Yeah, definitely. Also, just worth flagging as well that this is from the Commander product as well. So the Jund Commander deck as well. Like I think the whole archetype of that deck is moving lands around zones. So
yes, it looks kind of cool.
Yes. Yeah, there's a number of us, James, who I think are like, ooh, who's going to be the one to buy it first? We already have a few Winggrace players in our pod, but hey ho. All right, we have another Baloth next, James. What do you think about this frenzied lad?
It's a less exciting Baloth, I would say.
It is, I'm afraid. But...
It is an angrier Baloth, but a less exciting Baloth. So Frenzied Baloth is green for a 3/2 creature beast. It says, this spell can't be countered. It has trample, haste. Creature spells you control can't be countered, and combat damage can't be prevented. So there's like nothing wrong with this card. It has lots of words. The words are all fine. I just don't know if any green decks actually want this. Like green means you on a 2 that you basically have to cast on turn 2 for it to be good. Means you have to be pretty much mono green. In reality, most mono green decks would rather a 2-drop for taps mana than a 2-drop for attacks for free most of the time. Listen, if you're doing the green aggro thing, then this is certainly good. It's one of the best 2-drops there exists for that deck, probably. I just don't think that is a deck in that many cubes, is my concern. But yeah, if it is for you, if your green decks are all about like the evolve 1-drop into hasty 2-drop into giant growth, my dudes, or Steel Leaf Champion, then yeah, this is the card for you. But for most cubes, this just doesn't fit. It's it would fit if it was red and had these words. It wouldn't fit. It doesn't fit at green.
No, I think that's fair. Like, so we do sort of already have this body as well on Keen-Eyed Curator that I'm not super hot on, but does see a play in cubes. But the utility of that is it can exile cards from graveyards. So I can see why people would be tempted by this card, James, because I've been hurt by counterspells. When I came back to playing Magic, I ran a lot of Spellbreaker Behemoth in more decks than I should have because of my large things being countered. I did learn that the trick was to play cheap things, so they're not as efficient when they counter your stuff. Yeah, I'd agree. I think this is, if you're doing like monocolored and there's like a devotion sub-theme, then maybe this could see a bit of play. There's a few cards in this set actually. I think this is one of the only ones we're actually talking about, but there is like some cards for mono green aggro, which isn't traditionally where we've been with cube. It's normal, we've done a whole podcast on the issues of mono green about it's rampant to hoof, that kind of thing. So this being another way of taking green, I do like. As you mentioned, James, the issue is like I would rather this be a Gruul card than a green card, because like Gruul monsters is exactly where I want to run this, but the double green makes it difficult.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, people are way too cavalier with their playing double pip cards, especially cheap ones. Like, you pretty much shouldn't put this card in your Gruul deck, right? Because when you don't have green on turn 2 and you can't cast this card until later, this card just isn't going to be good later. It has to come down on turn 2 to be effective. So, it's you probably don't want it in your 2-color deck.
Yeah. If you stumble and they play a 4 toughness creature, then this is pointless. But yeah, completely agree. Ooh, that's a segue. Talking about 4 toughness creatures, next up we're looking at Icetill Explorer. It is 2 green for a 2/4 creature insect scout. It has, you may play an additional land on each of your turns, and you may play lands from your graveyard, and landfall whenever land you control enters, mill a card. So I'm going to be honest, I really like this. It kind of does everything in one card. They've just stapled every ability I want, including it being a 2/4 for Corso Crucifix fans out there. Its main abilities are that it's an Exploration and a Crucible of Worlds stapled to one card. So I play effectively both of those in, I think, both of my cubes. I don't, maybe not specifically Crucible of Worlds, but a Crucible of Worlds effect I play in both of my cubes. This seems like a pretty obvious test. Like, the lands deck is very good. Just this card alone with a Strip Mine is incredibly scary, because you can play it as well as your land drop. Actually, no, you can just sack both. You can just do it twice from the graveyard and take 2 of the lands out. That's kind of nuts. And worth mentioning, Strip Mine is on the bonus sheet, so that can happen at pre-release. Be aware of that. Be aware of that.
That's great.
Yeah. But this with any land that can sacrifice itself is great, as you can just keep replaying it from the graveyard. So it goes really hard with fetch lands or effects that they use sack lands like Zuranorb that we mentioned with the Baloth Prime. Like, landfall effects are getting better, and it goes really, really hard with them. Like Scythecat Cub, Bristly Bill, Springheart Nantuko. These are some of the best things that green is doing right now. And having this be your top end to just make those cards better, I think is really good. The downside is that 4 is a lot of mana for a 2/4, but I still like it. The other things as mentioned, which I think could be relevant, because it's kind of, I think this card is exceptionally strong, and you can really let it run away with the game. But that landfall trigger is not a May, so do be careful milling out, unless that's your plan, in which case crack on. Maybe this is leading the Fast Bomb Thassa's Oracle deck that makes you win the game somehow. Like, I'm sure it's easy to do with those kind of cards. But yeah, basically, the question isn't does it go in my cube? It's what card do I cut? Probably Ramanap Excavator, if I'm honest with you, is my gut. 1 more mana, 1 more toughness, and a bunch more abilities. I think that's the most obvious swap for me. Are you kind of on board with that, James? Like, are you as high on this as I am? Like, is this going in your cube?
Okay. Sick. Yeah. Crucible effects always feel like an order of magnitude more powerful when you have an exploration in play. So getting the exploration on the Crucible is kind of cracked. So the thing is, even if you have like Crucible Strip going, which is kind of the dream, right? Unless it even if your opponent's just like a tiny bit ahead on board, it's still often not good enough because you're not making forward progress. You're not developing your mana either. You're just hoping that they run out of land drops at some point so you can stop stripping them and start actually doing stuff and progressing your mana. This gets around that problem because it can nuke their mana really, really quickly, killing 2 of their lands a turn, and then you get to start playing your land, progressing your mana, and actually dealing with the board. That's sick. And yeah, I think this card is basically just better than Excavator, actually, because you never cast Excavator on turn when you just have 3 mana, right? You cast it when you have 4 mana, so you can play the land right away. So this you can still cast for 4 mana and play a land right away because you get your extra land drop. And then if you do untap with it, it's like way more powerful than the Excavator, and you're more likely to untap with it because it has the extra toughness. I think this card's sick. The mandatory mill is kind of a thing if you're doing fast bond stuff, right? Like if you have, say, Zoan Orb, the Zoan Orb fast bond thing going.
It does stop you going infinite, which is kind of, I don't hate. It makes you find it can't be just like, I've gained infinite life, do you concede?
Yeah, I mean, it can be, because the Zoan Orb fast bond thing is also infinite mana, right? So,
yes, of course, yeah.
So you can, but you do need to win the game that turn if you're going infinite. You can't say, I have infinite life past the turn, because you may have infinite life, but you have 0 cards in your library. But honestly, I think that's fine. I think if you
live dangerously, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's not
you
a
can
downside.
figure out a way to win.
Milling is never a downside. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
It'll be fine.
That's a true statement.
Yeah. I think this card slaps. I am so here for Ice Still Explorer. Like this is probably one of the cards I'm most excited for in this. Like it's the card I know I need multiple of.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, it's like, how many cubes do I have? How many green X commander decks do I have? Jesus. Okay.
Yeah, for real.
All right. What do you think of our last green card, James? What do you think of Seed Ship Impact?
Yeah, so Seed Ship Impact is 1 green for an instant. It says destroy target artifact or enchantment. Good start. Naturalize. If its mana value is 2 or less, create a lander token. I think this is the first time we've seen lander tokens. They're artifacts you can pay 2 tap and sack them to search your library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped. Basically, it's a rampant growth token. I like it. Every new set at this point, they just have a new trinkety artifact token for you to do something with, which is kind of cool, I guess. This card's pretty powerful, actually. It's still strictly Naturalize is not an embarrassing card. We don't tend to play it because green has a lot of different options, but you will still see disenchant in cubes, right? And this is a lot better because sure, when you need to kill the big thing, you kill the big thing, and it's just naturalized, and that's fine. But anytime you get to snipe your opponent's mana rock with this on turn 2, it's kind of just a really sick 2-for-1, right? Because you're killing their thing and getting a rampant growth later. That's pretty nice. I think the question will be, do you want your naturalized to be something like this, or do you want your naturalized to be a creature? Something like Cankabloom is one you seeing play a lot, right? Because it's like a 2-mana 3/2, which you can sack to naturalize something, which is worse than this when you want to use it to blow up an artifact, but it's a hell of a lot better than this when they don't have an artifact you want to kill, right? It's a creature that attacks and blocks. But yeah, I think if you want a green spell which blows up a artifact or enchantment, this is probably the best one at this point. I guess it's between this and Nature's Claim, but I think in a lot of decks this is going to be better.
Yeah, I think the Pest Infestation is it's a similar effect, but like that also gets in because it's an infinite mana sink for me a lot of the time. Like specifically the instant speed thing. Like I think this is really hot. I really like this. As you mentioned, especially in high powered level cubes where there's just a bunch more artifacts running around. I think like you're guaranteed to see a naturalize. Like a naturalize will just be fine. And this is all upside. And I think this is the first time we've seen lander tokens, and like this is one I hope they do more of. Like I think lander tokens are very cool. I don't think we're talking about many other cards with them today, but like as a new artifact type, it's one I think is going to be very good. And it is kind of it is green just getting more ramp, which is not what it needs, but I think it's cool. So good to see.
Yeah, for sure. I'd kind of forgotten about Pest Infestation with that categorization. Pest Infestation is way better than this card. Pest Infestations for me is like, honestly, when I think about like Powered Cube, it might be the best only green card in the cube, very possibly. This isn't that, but it is very solid. And yeah, I agree about lander tokens. I think they're cool. I do kind of suspect they will only be here for this set, though, just because they are called lander tokens. And it would be slightly weird to have lander tokens on like Tarkir or something.
Universes Beyond, though. I think we'll see like.
Oh, they'll do a Star Wars one at some point, won't they?
Yeah,
it'll be in there.
It'll be like something Spider-Man based, like it'll be a pod or something like that. Like I'm trying to look up the lander token. Oh, it looks like a fish. It'll be on screen if you're watching the video. The lander token looks kind of like a cross between a Warhammer drop pod and a fish, which is weird. Cool. Marvelous. All right, moving on. All right, on to Multicolored. First up in Multicolored, we have Space-Time Anomaly. This is 2 white and a blue for a sorcery. Target player mills card equal to your life total. Well, I think this is a pretty cool card, actually. It is technically a win con for a life gain deck, which is kind of nice. Like, it gives you a reason to play Soul Sisters. Like, a lot of cubes have been running Guide of Souls recently because that card's really strong. Like, this kind of goes quite hard with that. It's a life. I like that it's a life gain win con that's actually good, and you don't have to like untap with like Felidar Sovereign, which is I think like 6 mana or something like that, and you need 40 life. It's just like with this, it's just have more life than your opponent's deck size at any point, and you win the game. That's kind of good. Like dedicated life gain decks will get there, but then it's also probably fine just in a control deck. Just draw out the game with this in your deck. Play walls, play ways of slowing down your opponent, cast this later in the game and kind of win out of nowhere. That is tempting to me. And then on top of that, it says target player. And the mana is a bit tough for most kind of self-milled decks. They're not normally white, but there is some combo potential, like cast this on turn 4, mill 16 or so cards, and cast an Underworld Breach and play everything from your bin. Maybe like win from there, like probably win from there. Like this does have like the brain freeze kind of tech as well. It's a bit more mana, but it does have that kind of ability as well. Like I think this probably gets in as a control win con, but like I think it's solid. I'm kind of here for it.
My issue with this card is that it's so very matchup dependent.
Mm-hmm.
Like if against an aggro deck, I think this card's just horrible because thing is it's kind of not a win con, right? Because if you're playing against an aggro deck and you have more life total than they have cards in deck, you have already won that game, you know?
Yeah, okay.
It doesn't matter. You didn't need this card. And most of the time when you're against aggro, like with your control deck, you they get in a bunch of damage early. Hopefully you find a way to stabilize, and then you need your 4 mana card to like turn the corner, right? This doesn't do that. Like it's going to mill 7 cards and not matter. Against the against other control decks, though, it's going to be busted. Like, I think if this card was just inserted into a bunch of cubes, the way I would approach it is I would want it in my pile, and if I was either one of these colors, I would try and board into it against every control deck because it's so incredibly hard for them to beat this card. You basically play it whenever they're tapped out. It doesn't even matter if it's lethal right away because, if you get through a lot of cards in games of limited and you only start at 40, like if you get them to tap out on like turn 6 or so, they're probably down to like 27, 28 cards in deck. You just cast this, you're like, cool, you have like 6 or 7 turns to win the game. You probably can't because you're a control deck, and therefore I'm going to win. It's maybe you try and get it in there as a life game payoff, I guess. But you kind of have to be gaining a lot of life. It's got an interesting tension in that most of the life game playoffs that see play are like they reward you for each instance of life gain, right?
Yeah.
They're like when you gain life favors. This just wants you to gain a ton of life.
I think you need to be on like 27, 28 life when you cast this, and I think you'll win.
Yeah.
Is my gut. But
yeah. My point is that against aggressive decks, if you're on 27 life with 4 mana, you've probably won anyway. In controlling decks, yeah, sure. Maybe there's like a controlling life gain deck where this can be a reasonable card to play. It will still be bad against the aggro decks, but maybe it's like good enough against everyone else where it's okay.
Fair. Like, how would you feel about using it to mill yourself though? Because like there are some delve spells. There is like the Oculus, which is kind of hot. Like, do you like? Is this anything with the Thassa's Oracle, or am I just kind of looking to make Thassa's Oracle better? I mean, it doesn't need to be.
I don't like it for setting up things like Delve and Oculus because, the reason Treasure Cruise is busted is because it costs 1 mana, right? If I spent 4 mana to set it up, then it's no longer busted, right? I could have just cast a 5 mana draw 3. And kind of the same thing with Oculus, really. Setting up Thassa's Oracle. So obviously there's the argument that like if you could mill yourself out, then a bunch of the time you could mill them out instead. So it's like, do you really need the Foracle? But maybe there's like a deck where you're milling yourself a ton with stuff like, your Satyr Wayfinders and the like, and then this gets you to the Foracle. It sounds kind of tough to me, but maybe there's something there.
That makes sense. Okay, from one card that might be tough to another one, what do you think of the Cosmogoyf, James?
I think this proves the hypothesis that you will put any Lurgoyf I print into our set review.
That might be potentially true, but this is one that people are talking about, and I do think part of the point of these set reviews is to even cards we don't think are super hot and as playable to discuss why.
That's fair. And I can see this. I think people are talking about this for Constructed, so maybe it's interesting to talk about it for Cube. So Cosmogoyf is a green and a black, so 2 mana for a creature elemental Lurgoyf. As all good Lurgoyfs are, it is a star/1+ star. And this creature's power is equal to the number of cards you own in exile, and its toughness is equal to that number +1. Cards in exile is pretty tough. That's a lot harder
it's incredibly tough
than graveyard. So, like, I'm not saying you could do, but you have to do a lot of work to get a large number of cards in exile. And the thing is, if you're going to do a bunch of work to set up something like I have a bunch of cards in exile, your payoff has to be really good. And this just isn't. Like, if you really do the thing, you get like 6 cards in exile. Like, congratulations, you got a 6 power creature, but this is probably like turn 7 or 8 by the time you've set this up. And well done, you have a slightly undercosted vanilla creature. Like, they can just kill it, they can block it, whatever they need to do. This I don't think is realistically something many people are going to be doing in Cube.
No, I'd agree. Like, why Tarmogoyf is good is that it's basically free to run. It's easy to cast. It's 1 in the green, and it gets better just by you playing Magic. Like you duress them, you kill their creature, you trade off a different creature. It's a 3/4. That's really easy. That's nice and straightforward. The setup is easy, and the reward scales with the game going on. This is not that. This is also a Goyf that makes all your other Goyfs worse, because how we generally get cards into exile is by putting them into the bin first and then removing them. That's the for me, like there is a bunch of like impulse draw in red, but in these colors it is generally graveyard first, then exile. So you are actively making your other Goyfs worth if you run this. So this does not go in like the Delirium standard Goyf deck. Ignore that. That is not where this belongs. There is a place for this, and it's if you're doing specifically the graveyard as a resource deck, like the Tark, like original Tarkir era graveyard deck, where basically turn 1 you're going Stitcher Supplier, turn 2 you're going Satyr Wayfinder, and then you're playing like a Gurmag Angler. Like in that deck, like that's the kind of shell where this is going, where basically you are putting stuff into your graveyard to get rid of it, where your payoff is going, because in that scenario, turn 1 Stitcher Supplier, turn 2 Satyr Wayfinder, turn 3 Gurmag Angler, and this this is a 6/7. Like that is not bad. That is kind of hot. Like it's also good with the Abhorrent Oculus, which I like. Like it's basically it's how you are building your graveyard deck, and we have gone away from just we are putting things in our graveyard to delve them away. That's not really where we are anymore. We are in the more either things go to graveyard and we reanimate them, or we want different types of things in our graveyard to make our Barrow-Goyf and our Pyrogoyf and our what's the name of the cheap like more Delirium-y is kind of how graveyards tend to be nowadays. But like that, the deck for this can exist. It's just how you want to build it, and I do think that could be better in more budget environments, because most of the cards I mentioned, like apart from Abhorrent Oculus, which is probably expensive, I don't actually know, but like Stitcher Supplier, Satyr Wayfinder, Gurmag Angler, and this shouldn't be that expensive. So in a lower powered, in a more budget environment, I think there could be work there, or I think this could be something there, but this is definitely not one for the vast majority of cubes.
That's fair. How do you feel about the Abzan Ketramos Cosmogoyf Get My Cards in Exile deck?
Ooh, that's kind of hot. How's the mana in standard right now? Is that doable?
I'm sure you can try.
I kind of like that. Yeah, like it's the kind of like this the kind of card I want to play, but I just know that I have no environment. So like when I first saw it, I was like, sweet, another Lurgoyf for my Disser, the Relentless Lurgoyf deck. Job done. And then I looked at it, I was like, this will only ever be a 0/1.
Yeah, it will.
It's never going to be anything else, so there's no point in me doing it. Yeah, I want more Lurgoyfs, and I will make James talk about them, and I'm sorry about that, but
that's fine.
But like there was a lot of talk over this card, and it's kind of yeah, some things you need to kind of be honest with your babies. All right, let's keep it going. Next up, we have Ragost Deft Gastronaut. Marvelous. It is a red and a white for a 2/2 legendary creature, Lobster Citizen. It has artifacts you control are food in addition to their other types, and have pay 2 and tap. Sacrifice this artifact, you gain 3 life. So they're all just foods. It also has pay 1 and tap, sack a food. Ragost deals 3 damage to each opponent. And at the beginning of each end step, if you gained life this turn, untap Ragost. So this is a nice little engine. As a card by itself, it does need to go into queue that already has an artifact deck, or has ways of constantly or has ways of consistently making artifacts to really do anything. That's not normally in Boros, but red does make artifacts, and white is starting to make more. Like there could be something there. It is slow, but it's an interesting way to stabilize yourself by gaining some life back, or by finishing off your opponents. There is some neat things you can do with this card by turning all your artifacts into food. This and Nuka-Cola Vending Machine is cool. The vending machine says whenever you sack a food, make a treasure token. So then that combined with Crack Clan Ironworks Infinite Mana, or if you swap the Ironworks out for Grinding Station, you can mill out your opponent. Those are cool, but definitely not for every cube. This is very much if you're doing a cool engine type of thing, making people put things together in a slower cube, I think this gets interesting and could see play there. This is not just, oh, I have a Boros section that does some bits with artifacts, slip this in. Like, I don't think it's there. Like in that scenario, it is either you're only really running it for like the turn food in, like weaponize, like basically throw food at your opponent, which is kind of funny, but that is just a bit too slow, I think. Yeah, definitely one for slower or more budget environments, but it could be fun there. There's some cool things you can do with this lobster chef.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's one of those cards where it sits slightly awkwardly in its color pair, right?
Yeah.
Like if this was a black-green card that said all my artifacts for food, that might be interesting. If it was a blue-red card, it might be more interesting. And I just have good at making lots of artifact space. Red-white is doing that in a smaller amount of cubes, I would say. And the payoff is not amazing. You get to throw some foods at your opponent. Maybe that's enough to finish them off, but a lot of the time it won't be. The Nuka-Cola vending machine thing is cool though, and that's it works with basically any sack out of that. You can anything you can sack an artifact to, you can do as many times as you want. So even if it's just like a the modular one where you put counters on it and then move counters around.
Arcbound Ravager.
Arcbound Ravager, thank you. Yes. That is just like put infinite power on whatever you want, right? Like you don't need a lot to make that work. But again, you probably need some other reasons to put a card like Nuka-Cola vending machine into your cube. So it's a little tough, I think.
Right, we're moving on to artifacts, and we have a very big spacecraft, James. What do you think of Dawnsire Sunstar Dreadnought?
This is very big and it's very pretty. It is 5 mana for a legendary artifact spacecraft. It has stations, so you can tap your creatures to put charge counters on it. Once it has 10 charge counters on it, which is really quite a lot. Has the text, whenever you attack, Dawnsire deals 100 damage to up to 1 target creature or planeswalker. But it's still not a creature, so it can't attack itself. But your other creatures could trigger that. And if you get up to 20 or more charge counters...
Oh man, if you decided to not kill your opponent.
If you decided that the best use of these 20 power
20
creatures
power.
was to tap this, then it does become a 20/20 flying. No. This is so this is 5 mana, do so little. If you have enough creatures in play to make this good, so you can trigger this, like you should be doing other things with those creatures. Imagine that with your board of creatures that you tap to play this, imagine instead of tapping them to do this, you just played a different 5-drop, which killed them. Even if you want flying boat things, play Sky Sovereign. Sky Sovereign's a much better flying boat than this. This isn't the way, I'm afraid. This is so situational. Tapping 10 power worth of creatures, even if it's over a bunch of turns, like you can't just be sitting around doing nothing with your creatures for that long. I don't think there are scenarios where this is good. Although 100 damage to a creature is kind of cool, because maybe you could do something with Stuffy Doll, that card's sweet.
Yes, that kind of stuff seems quite fun.
But it would be cool if they had that effect on a card that you could play, and this isn't a card you can play.
Yeah, apologies. Yeah, I didn't make any notes on this card because I think it's dreadful. I think I did add it to the list.
You did.
I did, but it's one of these ones where like this is in theory is like the big mythic spacecraft of the set, and I think it kind of sums up exactly our issues with Station in its or as they have currently presented it to us. This could again, it's just the numbers are all over the place. Like 5 is still quite a lot, so you're not playing this until like this is not coming down early, and then you have to put so much power into this, so much for it to do anything. Like it's not like you can cheat it into play and it'll do anything. Like if you tinker for this, cool. You're still waiting another infinitum amount of like if in a game of limited, anyone ever attacks with this creature, I'm trying to work out how big I can give a reward for this. Like what legitimately could I do? Like
the game they're imagining this being good in, I think, right, is where we have a big board stall like. I have a bunch of 4/4s and 5/5s, and so do you, and no one has good attacks, and I can afford to tap a couple of them to this every turn, and the remaining ones are still enough to hold back your board, and then eventually this becomes a creature and wins the game, right? I just don't think enough games of Cube play out that way where you can realistically put this in a deck ever.
So again, we are talking about specifically Cube. When I say like in Commander, cool, crack on. Like I could play. I kind of want to play this in Commander, but not in Cube. Okay, my hot take: if this ever attacks in a cube, the cube has been built incorrectly. There should be means to end games before this. Is that fair to say, Jay? Like it's like, what am I doing with this? Am I casting my Craterhoof Behemoth and then crewing this? Is that what we're doing? Is that the level that we're getting to? Like, because I can't think of another way of doing it. It's so much.
I sneak attack in my Emrakul and then I tap it to station this. Yeah. Great. Yeah, it seems tough.
Yeah, like flavor-wise, I really like these spacecraft. And again, like the commander decks do look cool, and like there is a bunch of ways that you can make it up. Like yeah, we mentioned proliferate and that kind of stuff, but this just seems a stretch too far. All right, but from a card that probably won't see a lot of play in Cube to a card that I think is going to see quite a lot of play in Cube. Our last colorless card of the day is Tezzeret, Cruel Captain. This is 3 generic mana for a 4 starting loyalty legendary planeswalker, Tezzeret. It has a static ability of whenever an artifact you control enters, put a loyalty counter on Tezzeret. It has a 0 untap target artifact or creature. If it's an artifact creature, put a +1 counter on it. It has a -3 of search your library for an artifact card with mana value 1 or less, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle, and a -7 of you get an emblem with, at the beginning of combat on your turn, put 3 +1 counters on target artifact you control. If it's not a creature, it becomes a 0/0 robot artifact creature. So for 3 mana, this does seem like a lot of Planeswalker. Like, there's a lot of good Artifact Matters card that we've mentioned just in this video, just in this podcast as well. But this does want to be in an environment where there is a lot of artifacts in the cube already. A lot of artifacts running around. They make this card playable. Like, this is tricky to just slot into just a general cube. Like, I think you need an Artifact Matters deck in that environment to make this good. The static, I think, will be temperamental. You'll have some turns where you can't add any counters, and you'll have some turns where you play something like a Blood Fountain or a Night Scythe. Like, these are artifacts that make other artifacts when they come in, and with those, you'll get a couple counters on it here and there. I think that'll be fine. The 0 ability, I think, is okay. It has some flexibility, like doubling up the activation on a Goblin Welder could be fun, or in higher powered level cubes, obviously untapping your Time Vault is the most obvious way of winning a game. Why I said I think this needs to go into a cube that has an artifact deck is I really want artifact creatures in my deck with this to actually feel like I'm getting something out of it, out of that 0. The counters I think will be nice in an aggressive shell, and it kind of leads into the into the -3, which again gets better in more powerful cubes that are running more broken cheap artifacts. Like Moxes and Lotus are obviously good, but so is like Sensei's Divining Top, so is Skull Clamp. It's quite flexible there. Because unlike Urza's Saga, this can go and get your walking ballista, so it's a bit more interesting as a combo tutor. It can also get things like Candelabra of Tonos for your High Tide deck, your Lotus and your Lion's Eye Diamond for your Breach combos, your Zuranobe for your land combos. That is very flexible. I do quite like that. And I am so very glad that this cannot go and get Time Vault, as Time Vault is 2 mana, as that would be stupid. The -7, I do think, is very powerful, and it does add some inevitability to a game. Like, again, if you're getting artifacts onto the board consistently, that will take over a game, and if the deck wants to do this, they will get 3 artifacts into play very quickly. Like, on turn 4, playing this, play an artifact land, cast Blood Fountain, you could ultimate it straight away. Like, there are decks that I have in my cube that could do this relatively consistently. So yeah, I think if you have a deck that has some cool things with artifact creatures, or you have a bunch of high power cheap artifacts, I think this is probably a slam dunk. This does seem like quite a pushed card, but it does need that shell to do anything, basically.
Yes, yeah, I would agree with all of that. I quite like this in powered cubes specifically as well. I think this is one which we say about a lot of cards. This is good in mid-power level cubes. This, I think, is better in more powerful cubes because it scales so well with those with the busted acceleration, right? If you have it in your opening hand, or even if you're going to get it, because untapping it is really good. like if you have this and Mana Vault in your opening hand, you will have 8 mana on turn 2. It is not reasonable.
Jesus.
You go
Okay,
turn 1 Mana Vault, tap Mana Vault for this. This comes in, untaps Mana Vault. Turn 2, tap Mana Vault, untap Mana Vault again with this, tap it again. That's 6 mana. Your 2 lands is 8 mana on the second turn of the game. It's
that's obscene.
Yeah, and even if you don't have a vault in your opening hand, right, you can still go and get it with this and set that up. Yeah, like that's very powerful. I think it's one of those cards where it will be, in Power Cube, you're probably not like first picking this card, but once you have one of these cards that's really strong with, it will become quite a high pick. Because there's also just great value stuff to go and get with this as well. Things like Retrofitter Foundry, Currency Converter are like good, valuable artifacts that are, and that are good later into the game, and they get better when you can untap them, which this does. And they add more artifacts to the board, which is going to increase the loyalty on this. So I think those are really strong options. Say going and getting a Skull Clamp is good. It feels like if you're in the artifact deck, you're going to have like 3 or 4 really good things to get with this. You kind of want to be able to get something that generates mana and some things that generate value. I don't think that's going to be difficult. But if you have something like a Solving or a Mana Vault in your deck, this goes up a ton. Even, obviously, you can't get it with this, but like the Grim Monolith, Basalt Monolith are really strong with this as well. Just more ways to untap them is great. And obviously in that cube, it is also relevant that it untaps Time Vault. So this seems really strong. I'm gonna put it in my cube, and I expect it to be good.
Yeah. Honestly, this does it. Just it seems great. Yeah, Tezzeret kind of busted and so cheap. 3 generic. Yeah. Right, we're moving on to lands now, and we have 2 cards that I want to mention. We have Festering Thicket and Glittering Massif. So this is them starting to finish off the cycle of cycling lands that I think originally were printed in Amonkhet. This is them starting to work on the enemy cycle. So we have Festering Thicket. This is the Golgari one. It is a land swamp forest. It taps to add a black or a green. It enters tapped and it has cycling for 2. Obviously, the Boros one is the same, but it taps for a red and a white. These aren't the most powerful lands, but as budget jewels, these are great. I think these are often played actually in cubes that are breaking rarity for lands, along with more lower powered or more budget environments. Not because they work with fetches, but because they work with cards like Farseek, and they work with 3 visits, that kind of stuff. Effects that get non-basic jewels from a deck, like generally slower decks. Like these are decks that are fine taking off a turn early in the game to play a tap land or to ramp and fix. The cycling is nice, like they are effectively card filtering later in the game when you these are solid like on turn like 6 or 7 when you draw them, when you don't need to play a land, when you just want to find a relevant spell. These can go to the bin. That's fine. Like my gut is the Golgari one is going to be better because Golgari has more decks that care about lands going to the graveyard. And Boros doesn't traditionally want lands that enter the battlefield tapped. But these are great budget lands. Run them in your cube. Hopefully over more Commander products, they will finish off this cycle and they'll just print them into Oblivion because the rest of the cycle is relatively cheap because they are very much decks you see in every Commander product. I'm glad they signed to finish off the cycle. Do it for the rest of the land cycles out there. That would be very nice, please and thank you.
Yeah, it feels a bit stingy of them only giving us 2 more. I feel like
there is only 2 Commander decks in this.
So these were in the I guess the Jund Lands Commander deck. Yeah, okay, that kind of makes sense.
One's in the Jund Land deck, one's in the Jeskai deck. There's 2 Commander decks from this set.
Makes sense. All right, so to finish off the set review, we have a couple more lands to go. First up, we have Uthros, Titanic God Core. This is a land planet. The land enters tapped, it taps for blue, and it also has station. So I guess planets are a type of land that can station, I guess.
Everything you've said up to this point is so cool, and it's about to get so much worse. But
anyway, when it has 12 charge counters on it, so if you tap 12 power worth of creatures to this over the course of the game, then you can pay a blue and tap it to add blue for each artifact you control. This land isn't very good. It's 12 power worth of stuff. 12 charge counts is just too much for this to be on by the time you need it to be on, right? Having said that, I think it kind of has the redeeming quality of, if you have a really deadly cube, right, and you have a bunch of time to do this stuff, this kind of lets you get a little bit of a Tolarian Academy experience in a cube which can't handle Tolarian Academy. And I don't know, I think that's kind of cool. Because it will, it can happen eventually, right? In a long game, this can become relevant. And if you've got a ton of mana sinks, then, maybe that's something. I do find it bizarre, though. Once we've tapped 12 power of creatures to this, can't we at least have it be Tolarian Academy? Pay a blue and tap it.
I didn't even notice that. Oh, my God. Yeah. So you need another land in play. Oh.
I mean, it doesn't matter a ton. By the time you've done this, you'll be able to play that blue. It's not a big deal.
It means splashing is tricky because, I've splashed it. I just had a Tolarian Academy in my red-black artifact deck before.
True. Yeah.
And it's just a colorless land, and that's fine. In my deck, it makes colorless mana, and I'm fine with that. This can't.
But the short version is it's not very good, and it most of the time will be a tapped island. And I believe untapped islands are normally available, so you should probably play those.
No, I'd agree with that. Do you want to read the?
I'm happy to also finish us off with the final land of the day. Yeah. It is Evendo Waking Haven. This is also a planet. It also enters tapped. This one taps for green. This is also a station. When this one has 12 charge counters, you can pay a green, and it taps for a green for each creature you control. So we've gone from building our fake Tolarian Academy to building our fake Gaia's Cradle. This one's also quite bad. I guess this one's probably a bit better because the thing you're building around is having lots of creatures. Those creatures can, in theory, tap to station this if for some reason you can't attack with them. But realistically, the same stuff applies. 12 is too big of a number for this. I think these would have been kind of cool if they made that number a little bit smaller, but 12 just feels like too much.
Or if they didn't come in, if they didn't come in tapped, at least they'd be free to run in your deck.
Yeah,
but they come in everything is just working against you. I very much feel these are just so unbelievably safe. Both Uthros and Evando, I think are cool cards. Vibes are phenomenal, but just in terms of my honest opinion of them, and I don't want to come across too negative on them, but basically, I understand why people are excited by them because it's ooh, I have access to Gaia's Cradle, or I get access to Tolarian Academy in my cube, or that kind of thing. And it's my honest opinion is, if cost is prohibitive, then proxy Gaia's Cradle and Tolarian Academy. And if power is prohibitive, run the ones from Ixalan instead. Run Growing Rights of Itlamok and Storm the Vault. They both do a better job of being those cards, in my opinion. They both come down, they both activate earlier, and they're already kind of Growing Rights of Itlamok. Its flip clause is it only works in a deck with a bunch of creatures. That's fine because that's where you want the Gaia's Cradle. Storm the Vault flips into a Tolarian Academy, but it does that if you have a bunch of artifacts. That's fine because you're in the artifact deck. I think if you want those effects, those already exist. And I think they'll be more consistent, and they'll actually do they do the job of being the budget, lesser powered version of those powerful cards. I think this is kind of why are these mythic? Why are they
mythic? And it really winds me up for when you've put in this stupid amount of work, it's still not even quite Tolarian Academy.
Yeah, the fact that
so that seems really needless.
So Growing Rights of Itlamok and Storm the Vault, they both flip into technically better versions of those cards because they can tap if you don't have creatures.
Yeah, I think it's a shame because it's, I think, a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
Because I think lands like Tolarian Academy and Gaia's Cradle are really cool lands, which I think actually have really good play experiences and really fun to build around. But you can't put in a bunch of cubes because they're too powerful and too expensive. And I think a worse version, a nerfed version of those cards could be really cool. But they nerfed them way too much, and they're not, because they're not powerful enough for really anything.
In Commander, these are probably fine. Like
Everything's fine in Commander.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter in Commander.
No, I know. Yeah. We are a cube podcast. Let's stick to cube. And again, I don't mean to come across negative on these cards. It is just, again, as I said in the intro spiel, we are comparing these. Like we don't need to accept substitutes. If we want a Gaia's Cradle or a Tolarian Academy, I can run them, or I can run one, or I can run a less efficient one that it will do the job better. Like I think these two are both stone cold unplayable, is my honest opinion of these. And yeah, and I think that's that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah. I mean, it's fine. Not all the cards are aimed at us, right? But yeah, I think it is just a bit of a shame that it feels like a bit of a missed opportunity to print some really cool cards. But such is life.
I'd agree. My gut is they very much tested a lot of this to death, and these are the numbers they came up with to make them probably show up in Standard, but not much beyond that. This
is very true. They are testing around Standard, and I understand them being scared of Tolarian Academy because it's a scary
reasonable
card. You know,
yeah, reasonable. You know what? Yeah, that's fine. I know the last couple of cards I might have come across a bit down on, but like as a set, I think this is actually really cool. And there's a bunch of cool stuff that I'm looking forward to testing in both of my cubes. Like, James, did anything stand out to you from the set that you're thinking of trying in your powered cube?
Yeah, I'm pretty stoked for this one. I'm excited to do something completely degenerate with Tezzeret. That sounds like a lot of fun. But I think honestly, the card I'm most psyched for here is the Ice Till Excavator, the Ramanap Excavator with the exploration stapled on. I always kind of feel like that deck needs a bit of a boost, and this seems like a great way to do it. I think this is actually a really good upgrade for that deck. It just does everything that deck is looking to do. So yeah, I think. And I think the Baloth Prime is like a reasonable addition to there. Yeah, a lot of cool cards this set. Also, just like a bunch of stuff for more like mid power level cubes, which I think will play really well. Stuff like the Bush Razor, I think is quite a good one. Yeah, really good set, I think, for cube.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah. Both of those I really like. Yeah. As I mentioned, it's how many Ice Till Explorers I need to buy, not am I buying just one. But yeah, there's a bunch of cool stuff in here. Yeah, I really like Wally, like the Rust Harvester. I think that one's really cool. Like it does feel like it's kind of this nice little sweet spot they've been in the last couple of sets of like, it's not like each set has like one or two cards, if we're being honest, that kind of like become cube staples. And then there's but there are so many options for people trying interesting and different things. Like we're really in a point where you don't have to just go for like the stock list of just like, here are the best cards. You can really go deep on archetypes now, and I think that's really cool and really interesting. And there's a bunch of cool cards for that from this set. Like Artifacts especially has got so much stuff, and my cube is already in a point where it can take advantage of that. But like, I think it'll mean other people start looking at it a bit more and do some cool stuff with it. So yeah, so all round, really hyped for the set.
Nice, yeah, for sure. I think it's got a lot of cards to try out.
Marvelous. Right, that's going to do it for today. James, thank you very much, man. Pleasure. Good to be back.
Yeah, always a pleasure. And yeah, we should be back on our usual release schedule, I think, from now on.
That's right, we'll be back with another episode in a fortnight's time. All right, that's going to do it for today. Do make sure you like the podcast, give us a 5-star review, tell a friend, all that good stuff. Whatever positive affirmation you can give us, we would greatly appreciate it. It's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from James. And until next time, we'll see you all soon. You'll take care. Goodbye.